Willkommen, bienvenue, and welcome back to Tidy Tuesday on Friday with Light. I was just going through the our appearances because the one that I've got I really like using, but the cursor doesn't show up particularly well. So in the actual window itself, the cursor is white. But from y'all's view, it's black. And that makes it incredibly hard to see. So I wanted to come in here and see if there were any that you could at least see the cursor without me being completely blinded by all of the white. But I'm not thinking that's going to be all that feasible. Because if we tried Xcode here, it's just so bright. All of the ones with a light background are just so bright. I'm sure I would get accustomed to it. But I don't know, man. I suppose we could change the RStudio general theme. But even then, it's so washed out. It's just so hard to look at. It's easier on the main screen because you get the sharpness of the font, whereas when going through OBS, it's a bit... But at least you can see the cursor. So maybe it's a thing that we could do. Maybe we could change the font somehow. Like, get a bolder font. Bit easier to read, but over here still kind of annoying. Okay, that's easier to look at. But even then, I'm not real sure about it. I just wish that the display capture would actually pick up the cursor the way it's supposed to. I'm just double checking some stuff on the Discord. Okay, there we are. Hey there, Daniel. How's it going? Hello, hello, hello. Hopefully my ramblings about audio things were to your liking. Let's see. So I've done a couple of changes with the layout, the color and the whatnot. I don't like how bright it is, but I can't do anything about it. Because when we change to a nice, friendly, dark theme, you can't see my cursor. Grr. And so, unfortunately, for the streaming, we need something a little more friendly. I don't remember what I had it on. Because it wasn't Xcode, because that had the purple. Might be tomorrow. Yeah, because that had the nice friendly purple and orange. No, it's an OBS thing. Because on my screen, it's white, and it's nice, and it's beautiful. But through OBS, it stays black. Alas, here we are. Okay, so first things first. We need to actually get the data and see where we're going. And so we always grab quiet because I love quiet. Push it on to week 40. And see what we got. Why does mine look like that? Yeah, everyone that I've ever learned from had it in the default. Like, always same font, same size, same everything, because most of the people that I've learned from don't use it regularly. They just end up having to teach it. Yeah. And trying to teach with the keyboard shortcuts, they're like, wait, how did you, huh? Yeah. We are in week 40, aren't we? Why? Is my app still running? Ah, okay. I should also load the library, because, wait, no, we don't have to, because I'm using that. Why? Only 39 weeks exist, but last week was 39. Yeah. Why for no new data? I am suspicious. Because I don't want to pull the whole thing. Because all this stuff is here. All right, I should probably bring that up as well. I wonder if it'll do it properly by date. Okay, so weird. This is quite possibly the only time I've seen this happen where it was like, nope, I don't want to be helpful and normal. I'm gonna be weird. Bam. Okay, so now, do we actually have things? Okay, now we actually have things. Then we should check on our dictionary to see what's in what. Really, you're only giving us the the papers CSV, huh? So the question becomes, what is it that we're interested about this data? Is there anything that we would be interested in authors, programs, paper authors, and paper programs? Oh, so these two are probably just joins to get from the papers into the others. But even then... Oh, so like this program is probably an ID. So National Bureau of Economic Research. So joining data sets. Oh, okay. So yeah, we should probably take a look at it to make sure that they aren't joined already. So new research by National Bureau of Economic Research affiliates circulated for discussion and comment. They distribute more than 1,200 working papers each year. They have not been peer reviewed. They're issued more than 18 months ago. They're open access. More recent papers available without charge to affiliates of subscribing academic institutions. So I would imagine that would be quite a few. And employees of corporate associates, and then government employees, journalists, and residents of low-income countries. That's interesting. So let's... Now that's a relatively dangerous thing to do, but okay. Representation across research programs. That's relatively straightforward to do. And then they mix the two together. Co-authorship patterns. Oh, that'll be an interesting thing to check on. How do they deal with multiple authors for a single paper? So paper year month title, you've got that, but then you'll have authors and paper authors. So authors will just be with an author ID. Oh, so a couple of missing things there depending on what's going on. Ooh, human capital lifecycle earnings models. So then if you have paper, authors, then you'll have the paper with the author. And so a quick and easy thing that we would probably want to check is if we group by the paper, we then want the count of authors. Right, we need something that'll actually let us do that. And so we'll have a variety of papers that have multiple authors. So if we wanted to know things about the authors, that'd be interesting. And so for now, we're just poking through, seeing what's what, because we should know something about our data before we try to do anything with it. I'm also interested in how many authors a paper could have. That didn't work. Why? Why were we unable to select just the one column I wanted? Oh, because it can't select it while it's still grouped. Can we ungroup? Never really had to. There we go. And now we've got enough things that we can break them down. Wow. Okay, so you have every number in between. Oh, really? There we go. So yeah, up to 17 authors. That is quite the thing. And so it'd probably be interesting to look at the distribution of types of papers based on how many authors they have. So yeah, just a simple histogram would be good. So we can grab this. Never tried piping into a histogram before. X must be numeric. Excuse me? Oh, right, it doesn't like the Tibble. Yeah. Pull. I've never used pull. Let's... Oh, so it just pulls it out into a nice friendly vector. Yeah, so I'm relatively new to this way of doing things. I work primarily in PHP, but going through data science programs, I picked up Python and R, but it was mostly picked up through doing it or from classes where they're like, okay, we're going to teach you the 3 things that we care about. All the rest is up to you. So, hey, look, we've got a very skewed, well, skewed might not be the right word for it, but very one heavy distribution, because of course it is. A lot of papers are going to have just one. Well, given the shape of it, I wouldn't be at all surprised if it was a ZIF. Because if we look them up, looks fairly similar. The problem is that this sort of Pareto type, you'd expect to have a nice long tail, and I don't know if that's necessarily what we're seeing. Maybe. Because I'm not sure I would expect a tail this long on data like that. I would expect more exponential, where you've got essentially a percentage chance of adding another author, and when the coin flip fails, you're done adding authors. More of a survival analysis sort of approach to generating that information. Okay, so then I'm interested in paper programs. And actually, let's do the same thing. Do people write papers on their own that often? It depends on what discipline you're in. Because in computer science, it is incredibly rare. I would imagine, psychology and some of the hard sciences as well, it would be fairly uncommon. But in music, all the time, almost every paper you read is one person. That is one person, they had an idea, they ran with it, and then they wrote it up. And so it's more unusual on that side of things to have more than one author. Okay, there is one promising thing in this data set that most people just assume to be true. I've worked with too much data to just assume that there is an author and a program for every paper. The fact that there are no zeros makes me quite happy, because then we don't have to worry about doing any sort of crazy left joins. We can just do a just normal old vanilla join. The trouble is, both of these have many, and thus any analysis that you do needs to take into account the fact that you might have multiple rows per paper. And yes, when I say normal, I mean inner. I'm accustomed to querying languages that do an inner join by default. Not left, not right, not outer. Good old inner join. Inner, inner, inner join. So, the way we would join it will depend on what it is we want to see and what we want multiplication of. If we definitely only want to know things per paper, we're going to need to aggregate both. And so if I wanted to know both the number of authors and the number of research areas, let's see if we can make this work in R. Oh, actually, we have no evidence that there's 0 because neither of these were done relative to papers. So there was no chance of a 0. So if we want to actually know that there are no zeros, we would need to do a join. However, I've not done a lot of joins. So let's look for their terminology for how this is going to work. Okay, so the all X, all Y is doing the left joining, or right joining, or outer joining. And so all X true is a left join. See if that works. Object paper not found because it's papers. Papers, please. Yeah, I don't like that. Table do it? Okay. So most common is 2. 2 authors per paper. There is no evidence of papers without authors. And then once again, histogram is not that great, so let's tabulate them. And then a single area is most common, but it goes all the way up to 14. Oof. Okay. So once again, we have demonstrated there is none with none. Always put use not always in table. Well, let's couldn't hurt to look. No nas. And it shouldn't It should never come back with the na because we are counting a grouping. Yeah, just never trust. Okay, so that's good. That's nice. That's friendly. The paper itself should never be na because we did a left join. If we did an outer join, then we might get na papers. But even then, a na paper wouldn't show up having a different count. That would be a little problematic because then you'd have a whole bunch of, like, potentially a whole bunch of authors that never wrote a paper, and so you'd group by na, and then you count up how many nas there were, and that's real bad. We should not allow that. Not allowed. Okay, now, what we want to try is to bring both of them together, such that we have the authors grouped by paper, counted, and then merge in the programs. I don't know if we need to ungroup it before doing that merge. Okay, now we've got a bit of a problem. That's not what we want. What we actually want to do is merge in the result of doing this group by. So we have the authors group by paper and count. We have the programs group by paper and count. And then we merge that on, wait, they use by paper. Yeah, it's good habit to always expect nas because weird things can happen. But I also like knowing when things just can't. And if it does, it should crash the program. Oh no! Object paper not found. See details. Maybe I should make it a string? Brilliant. So now we've got the paper ID with NX and Y. And then question then becomes pulling that out. So we take this, we drop it into a ggplot. Yeah, there's some things that I'm never certain when you can use it as an object and when you need to pass it as a thing. Really? Well, let's check. Yeah, merge is base. Oh, right. So they like being explicit about the joins. Okay. So but it should still do the same thing. Oh, but it did it way faster. Jiminy Christmas, that's fast. Merge, but versus inner join. Oh, okay, it was about the same. It just felt really fast the first time. Okay, once again, we're gonna pass this into a ggplot. Actually, I've never made this sort of plot before, so which is all luck. Because what we want is a good old hex grid. Hex bin. Geom hex. Do you have an example for me? Easy peasy. Geom hex. It's what I should have guessed, but here we are. Could not find ggplot. Way to load the libraries light. Okay, hexbin, not so great for this. Perhaps we should go for a good old-fashioned heat map. Geom tile. Excuse me? Oh, it needs the fill. How do we tell it the fill? Because we would need to count how many are in each pairing. Ooh! Because we need the Z. And for the hex bin, it counts how many are in the bin. Because we're doing a 2D histogram, basically. Okay, so we'd end up having to do a little bit more math. Kashmir! The trouble is we don't have the count yet, and so we're going to have to do the counting ourselves. And so, once more, into the breach. So we need to pull NX and NY, and then group by NX and NY, and count them. So this should tell us how many of each pairing we have. Et voila. Just pass it straight in to count those things. Well, that will make this a whole lot faster, because then we should be able to just do count paper, count paper, count nx and y. Okay. That's a very good thing. And then we can pass it back into our ggplot, and so now our fill is n. Doesn't tell us a whole lot. Good old docs. Going to be roughly equivalent to group by those and then summarize in a certain way. Okay. And so now we've got ourselves a little heat map that shows the relative relatedness of the two with one another. And since it's relatively round and radiating out, oh, but that number's too big. Get a little more definition in there on the log scale. Log all the things. I'm not logging all the things. These other counts are probably fine. But then again, they're counts. If we learned anything from generalized linear models, it's that your counts should be on the log scale. And so, by popular demand, let's see how it looks when you log all the things. It just spreads it out, because now they're no longer nice, friendly tiles. Okay, so now we've got ourselves an interesting little plot. Okay, now to remember which way around it is. I'm fairly certain it's that the new name equals the old name. And so, nx is the number of authors. The number, they're called programs. And then it's just log count is log of n. And now we give it nice, friendly names, because of course we do. Oh, no. Oh, and mutate shouldn't be mutate. Isn't there just a rename? Non-numeric argument to a mathematical function. Oh, great. Not plus pipe. And it's still being annoying. Why are we being annoying? Dplyr, rename. Rename. Old equals new. You know what? We're just going to call it count. And then we're going to do log of count. Can't rename columns that don't exist. Okay, so it was new equals old. Can't do it with a function, though. Hello! Wow. Log count not found. Log of count. Let's go. Yeah, I was doing two things. Don't do two things, kids. Just do one thing. And I'm okay with it saying log account over on the side there. And you can't see it anyway, it's under the chat. Doesn't count if it's under the chat. Transmute, though. Yeah, I don't know all the words. I looked up transmute, and it took me to mutate. I'm glad you like the fancy chat. Yeah, so the question is, should you transmute it up here, or should you modify it as it's going in? Questions for the ages. I'll mutate, but it drops all the other columns. I've always kind of wanted that. No one told me about it. And now you have. So that makes you the best for now. Drops existing ones. Nice. And Daniel votes for keeping the raw data modified in the plot. Not a terrible idea. Okay, so we've got a thing that is a thing. And now we might want to modify the bounds of said thing to see if it changes over time. Because I did say I want to do stuff with Shiny, and I have never done anything with Shiny, except, you know, watching Jesse poke around at it and talk about candy corn. And so I've got a nice Hello World app over here. And then we'll take a couple of steps, and then it'll be a, hey, look, it's a thing app. Let's double check that it still, in fact, runs. Hey, look, it's a thing. And it runs. Always a good sign. And then we stop it. Okay, before we do anything crazy, we don't want to load it from GitHub every single time. So we're not gonna. I don't think our studio has that fun VS Code thing. So alas, we have to actually type things. This one. What? Oh, right, the nameless first column. We're gonna get to that in a moment because I always forget about that too. You know what? Typing is just faster. Okay. So there's the underscore one, and then stupid row names. As you can see, I don't write CSVs very often. I always read them. No row names for us, please. Yeah, I'm not sure if I have Reader installed. Because as much as I am doing our streams, I am not a rigorously R person, and even if I am, I don't do it on this machine. I have a laptop where I typically do my work. Oh, so I do. Yeah, because the tidy code that I just grabbed from their GitHub used Reader. So apparently I have. What did I use it for? That does beg the question. What did I use it for? Regardless. Now we can go into the app and be like, okay, when loading an app, how do we scope this nonsense? Because for me, I would load it outside of these shenanigans. Right, I know I used it this time to read the CSVs, but I didn't install it to read these CSVs. So when did I actually install it? Because it must have been a while ago, and I don't remember using it for anything in particular. Like, what additional function does it have? But yeah, scope-wise, I would expect to read the data before we do any shenanigans. Oh, it installs with tidy. Okay, yeah, that makes sense then. Because you certainly don't want to read it like come on, the UI, it's just stuff. You don't even run any code. And you don't want to run it on the server. Why is it just output? Aren't we supposed to have a session in here? I wouldn't read it in the server because then every time it does anything, well, yeah, because basically anytime it does anything, it would reload the data. And that's meh. And so I feel like I should read it here. Yeah, I know. I just want to get into the habit with the session. I know lining these up is a bad idea because they're going to line up all the way over, but this is what I like. And then it's paper authors and paper programs. So now we can move these over. Grab a couple of these. And voila, it's a thing. To make sure it actually works, let's actually make sure it works. Hey, look, it's a thing. Brilliant. Next up, things that we will need. These two things. I don't think we need to be as quiet in here because no one's going to see it. Okay. Habit, habit, habit. Okay, so we've got how things are laid out. We've got how things actually work. And so let's take a look at where Hello Shiny is. Hello Shiny's in the upper left. And so that's where our title panel goes because it's at the top of the page. Hey, look, top of the page. Then the sidebar layout is broken into a sidebar panel and a main panel. Supposing that's what we want to do. I'm not convinced it is. But we should grab what it is we're talking about. National Bureau of Economic Research papers. Hey there, Mac. How's it going? What's a person doing a PhD in data science doing with PHP? So my job is not strictly data science, but it kind of is because it's all of the data work that is not supported by the university, which includes the acquisition of the data from third parties that are out in the world. And so there's quite a bit of web form type shenanigans that need to happen to get the data to us to be able to use it. So we've got our research papers. I don't think the sidebar is necessary for this particular project. It's not so bad. It's a nice job. I get to help people with making it easier because before it was all done on paper and it was a nightmare. So instead of having the sidebar layout, I just want a plot. This is not the type of slider we're going to be using, but that's okay. So we can get rid of those two because I don't think they'll be necessary. I want a title, a plot, a slider. Panama. Might as well keep the documentation. Our lovely plot. Slider for the choosing. And so now we've got our lovely outline over here so we can jump to things as we need them, but I doubt this is going to get long enough that that's going to matter. So now that we've ruined everything, let's run the app and make sure it is adequately ruined. Hey! Adequately ruined. So this does give me a little pause. Our ggplot is massive and our slider is tiny. Which is fine if we're on a phone. But if we're not on a phone, that's just crazy. Just nonsensical. What's even going on? So the question becomes, can we put a maximum width on a plot output? Feels like we should be able to. Because the default is 100%. And we do still want it to be... We still want it to be responsive. We still want it to change with the window. We just don't need it to change that much. So I'm not entirely certain whether we can do max width within the plot output. So let's check the slider input and see what options that has. Great, and this isn't even the one that we're going to be using. And so once again, it doesn't necessarily seem to have what I'm looking for. But that's okay. This is our first one. It doesn't need to be amazing. Now, let's see. What I want is shiny range select. Shiny widget gallery. That does seem like a better idea than going to Google. I'm waiting. Still waiting. Who's borked? Is it me? Is it you? Yeah, this is probably what I want. I mean, it's right here. Oh, this might not be the widget gallery, though. This is just a gallery. But even still, that's cool. Here's our widget gallery. Yeah, because normally you'd want a date range, except we don't have actual dates. We've got years and months, and I don't want to convert them. So I am going to be a loser and use a slider range.
You're not a loser.
Okay, so for the UI, yes, my lovely wife was walking by just as I called myself a loser, and she had to inform me that I was, in fact, not. So to make it a double-headed slider, all you actually have to do is just give it 2 default values. Okay. But for that, we'll actually need to know what the values in fact are. Wait a minute. That's not what I wanted. Okay, so yeah, Papers has the year. The nice clip. And that's what clipping is for. Okay, so here we've got year of, well, it's not strictly publication, is it? I mean, I suppose they're publishing it. Like, it's circulated for discussion and comment. So maybe we should call it a circulation date. Okay, so that's that. The input ID is going to be here. And then we need to call this plot something. I mean, it is still a distribution, so calling it a distribution plot is still fine. Might as well keep the documentation. Okay, so it's reactive, so whenever we change the thing, it should change. And it is of type plot. Render plot. And so we come back over here and we get our plot. And so that should return our plot. The only trouble is that we need to incorporate the filter because it will not appreciate it if we have nothing reactive inside this reactive thing. And so this no longer works because we need to start it on papers. We need to filter it eventually. And then inner join the authors in. I suppose we could inner join and then filter, but I mean, that would just be joining information onto rows we're not going to need later. So filter first, join, count, count. Okay. And so our filter is years, year is greater than input years number 1. This is R, so we index on 1, and year is less than input of years sub 2. Probably. We'll see how it goes. Just take another quick look at that. We filter on the paper's year is more than the first and less than the second. Okay, there's a thing. We don't like the format because it thinks it's a number instead of a year. If we move closer to the present, oh no, it's got fractions. Okay, so we need to ensure that our bounds don't change. So we need to make sure our limbs stay constant across everything. Can you as factor the slider inputs? Are you talking when we define them here, such that they look right, or such that they work properly later? Because they still work properly. Slider input step. Currently null. Step interval size. Easy peasy. Step equals 1. The number format, on the other hand, that's a whole other thing. Round, true. All to the nearest integer. Sep equals nothing. Perfect. I am very familiar with missing punctuation. It will not cause me troubles for long. Lovely. Okay. Now we need to affix the limits. Pretty sure it's limbs. Made after every UI change. Yeah, I suppose we should do xlim, ylim. Just to be very clear. So for xlim is authors. So min. This is after the filter, though. So it makes me think we should do this once for the entire data set at the beginning, just to get the values for the limits, and then recalculate it on the fly forever after. So do this once at the beginning to get not sure what I want to call it. Yeah, I don't think there's any particular need to. Well, I suppose we could summarize it and then just use those summaries. I'm trying to get used to piping things into things. And so there was a summarize. I remember seeing that. And so you give it a name and then a function. And so just to make sure this works. Oh, no, input not found. Yeah, of course not. There's no filter. Try it again. Brilliant. Okay. we grab the same for the programs. And we'll be good to go. Okay, and then we call this bounds. And we've got ourselves a thing that knows the appropriate limits independent of the filter. So xlim, let's double check the way it likes it. With the comma, not as a vector. Okay, so that's bounds. X is authors. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And then we do it again for the other. Brilliant. Run it. Okay, so we've got a thing. If we move it to the middle, the bounds remain. And so we can step it through time with the arrow keys and see when we had that expansion beyond 5. When did we get outside that box? Okay, so it wasn't until the year 2001 that we stepped beyond 5 authors. Well, yeah, this is not log scale. The colors are log scale, but the counts are not. So it wasn't until 2004 that we got 5 programs. And there was 2006 where we went beyond. Curse of Y2K. Everything changed. Okay, so now we go in and change the percentages on this because there's no reason for the plot to be 100%. Let's take a look. Actually, let's inspect that real quick. Wow, that's some shenanigans right there. Class IRS. So it's 300 wide. And so if we want to make our plot the same width, we make it 300. We want a little bigger, we go 350, 400. So let's take a look and see how it is exactly the same width. It's a little small, but we'll see how it goes. Oh, right, it's very small because of the legend. And so we should definitely add at least another 75. And so let's add a full 100. And so with full 100, you've got a little something like that. You can see how it spreads to vastly more inclusive of larger authorship as we get closer to the present. Think there's a way to animate the slider. Do you mean to directly animate it, like go click, 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 or to have it create the like make the changes more smoothly? Yeah, that distribution does not change much at all by dropping any of those areas. Cool. Yeah, I'm not getting into the animation just yet. I'm not quite to that point. I don't necessarily want to tell a specific story. This, just doing the Tidy Tuesday in Shiny, is to make something that you can do the data mining quickly and straightforwardly. Yeah, it's got an animate, but animation options. Excuse me, why does that go nowhere? I don't appreciate when I click on animation options and it goes nowhere. But yeah, for a first shiny thing ever, well, like, it probably is easy. That if you've got only one value, if you hit true, it'll probably just step across. Hey there, our podcast. How's it going? We're doing our first, my first shiny thing ever on a Tidy Tuesday thingamajig. And so far, we have an app with a slider. It slides. It shows how the number of authors and number of programs increased slowly until about the year 2000, and then shot up precipitously. Although up is typically not the way precipitation goes. And so it's just a nice, interesting little look into one particular statistic with the ability to just poke around at it and see how it goes. Any further work that we would do with it would likely be filtering by program, but then that would narrow this number quite a bit. The number of things that we have data-wise are not exactly vast. And so I suppose we could work with this catalog group. I don't remember where that even was. Let's take a look at that. Because this has programs. Oh, it's probably in the programs. There it is. Workshops and a conference talk. Nice, nice, nice. Hardly working. Well, one way or another, you've been busy. So it might be interesting to add some checkboxes to this shiny little app to be able to narrow it down by program category. Sure, why not? So ooh, interview. Interviews are always nice. Own audio editing. I love editing myself, but I don't do it very often because there are just not enough hours in the day. Okay, so back to what is that thing called? Gotta love the game. What is that thing called? Okay, let's go back. Okay, so checkbox group is what I'm looking for. Whole pipeline for the highlights and the main podcast. How much do you end up trimming it down? I don't know how much first take there is versus how much it just gets winnowed away to exactly what you want it to be. I know people who go either way, really. Checkbox group input. Okay, so this plot, this is, I suppose I should call this years slider because good form. And then this category check. Although, I'm not sure which would be better. Takes way long in the recording, mess up a lot. I am familiar with how hard it is to just sit down and say what needs to be said. But I practiced that a lot when I was doing YouTube instead of Twitch because I didn't want to do just a boatload of editing. And so I tried to do as much as I could one take. But you'll notice that sometimes I'll just stop. And I don't because of some of my background. And it just goes completely silent instead of the that keeps you engaged. So it's not necessarily better. Okay, and then the choices. You then make the choice of how do you want to pull this from there. And I did like what Jesse did with the levels of the thing because typically the levels will be in order, whereas if you just pull unique, it might show up in the order that they appear in your data. Photography. Yeah, video, it's a lot more noticeable when you do the cuts. It's a lot easier to crossfade audio than it is to make people not notice that the video just went, oh, I'm somewhere else now. I think that might be part of the reason for the current YouTube aesthetic of ridiculous jump cuts, where you go off into some ridiculous something or other because you have to cut anyway. Might as well make it part of the aesthetic. Okay, so this is from programs. Program category. Now the trouble is I want to select all of them. Will you just select all of them like so? Will you yell at me if I don't ever actually use those values? Oh, it doesn't like it. Do those not exist because it didn't actually load it as a factor? I do currently have a schedule set up. I just added it. It may or may not be accurate. Oh, it doesn't like levels. Is it not actually a factor? Just text. Oh no, we've got a nah. That's fine. Going in Shiny Cal tonight. Brilliant. I only typically do data things once a week. Oh, that's good. Any of the other streams that I do are typically video games, and the Monday one that is typically music may or may not happen. It's the one that's most likely to not happen. And the time frame at which they happen is a bit of a suggestion. I typically start when I say it's going to start, but it'll end whenever I'm done. Because it's entirely possible, with how smoothly this went, I might end a little bit early and then start a new stream of one of the video games that I was playing yesterday. And I do that because I'm also streaming over on YouTube. I haven't really shown it off on this stream. But if you notice down in this bottom left-hand corner, there's a red border with a 1. That's because there's one person watching on YouTube. And the chat would pick up the YouTube chat as well, if there were anyone over there. I don't know if I've got it open. I don't. Oh, well. But yeah, my on-screen chat is mostly there such that I can see it while I'm working and to combine the YouTube and the Twitch together. No, derailment is the entire point of doing this online. It's to hang out with people and get derailed into talks about candy corn and all of the random things that are much slicker than the nothing that I was taught how to use plier and piping and all that. So the only things that I know are the things that I've come across. But yeah, that's the whole point of doing it in public. If I just wanted to learn this stuff and do it, I'd do it alone. Hey, the tubes! See, and it has different colored names such that I can tell who's where. It's really nice. Okay, so we've got some checkboxes. They are nice in that they react to the label. I still don't like that the labels aren't the full width. C'est la guerre. Much fancy. Such wow. Okay, so then we would come back in here. Then my concern is how those values come back. Yeah, I used to have 3 platforms, and I will again somewhat soon. Back when Mixer was a thing, and before that, Beam, with that super low latency. I really liked that platform, but alas, it was not what they were looking for. Okay, so if we come back here, it'll show us what's coming in from the check group, and it's a list of the ones that are in fact checked. And if you're wondering what the third one will be once it's online, Altair. Once Altair is up and running, it looks like it's going to be a really great place until people find out it exists. And then I don't know how they're going to deal with all the assaults that'll be done to it. Oh, the thing before Justin TV. Gotta have your streaming set up to keep up. It's not necessary. The only the reasons that I don't do some of the things is that I had a YouTube presence before I had a Twitch presence, and so I never wanted to exclude those people. And so anytime I see a streaming service that has good points, I'll add it. And that's also why I'm never going to be an affiliate or a partner on Twitch, is because of the exclusivity clause. If you are an affiliate or a partner on Twitch, you cannot stream to another service at the same time. And I'm just not willing to make that commitment. Because I like the people who are on YouTube. And Altair seems like it'll be a good thing, and Mixer was a good thing until it stopped existing. Okay, so we can't apply that filter here. We have to apply that filter over here. But then we have another problem. Okay, so yeah, we can put the filter here, because here is where we want what program category. Yeah, and YouTube is perfectly great for archival purposes because it is much more long-lived than Twitch. And you can still archive everything over on YouTube if you're a partner. Most of them do, but it has to be delayed. It can't be simultaneously. Because, yeah, YouTube is better for things that are on demand. Twitch is typically better for things that are live. And Mixer was really fantastic for the low latency and the things that you could do because of it. That the literally instant live interaction where you could have people play the game literally alongside you, that was really amazing. Yeah, and some Twitch streamers will use YouTube on demand stuff to filter people over to the live stuff. So they'll do quick little just grab ya sort of things. I could see him using it for TikTok, sort of short, grab someone's interest, spread it virally such that they know you exist, sort of things too. Okay, so filter, program category. This is a thing that I don't often use in R. Is it that? And then this will be category check. And then we pipe. Oh, Oh no, I borked it! Object program category not found. Oh, because it was not from the programs. This is not in paper programs. This is in programs. Right, so that filters the programs, which we will need to join with the papers. Yeah, full-time content creator, you need every source of money you can find. Borked, get reset hard. Oh. Yeah, there are a lot of things that get launched and will skyrocket just a couple of people, and they'll be like, oh, yeah, that was a bad idea. I anticipate that happening with the Twitch boosting that's going on. As much as I'm a fan of boosting, XG boost, cat boost, love boosting, but Twitch boosting, I'm not sure how much that plan was thought through. So programs filter. So we limit the programs, join it on the paper programs to get the papers for just that programs. Then we count the papers. Now we should theoretically be unborked. The Twitch boost thing, that's a... Let's get rid of nah. Let's get rid of macro. Let's get rid of finance. Let's get rid of micro. Goodbye, everything. Bring back the finance. Hey, look. Only one thing for finance, possibly, because there's not a whole lot in the way of... Oh, well, there are 2 finance areas, so it could have gone up to 2. It's not exactly telling us a lot. Yeah, so macro only goes up to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, yeah, that's about how high it would go. Yeah. Twitch is already pay to win, though. Like, if it weren't already bad enough that it's a rich get richer once you add pay to win to it, the literal rich get richer. Okay, so this doesn't necessarily tell us as much as, like, it could, because there are more micro categories than the others. I am interested in the nah. Like, how many authors are on the nah? Nobody! Brilliant. I love that. It is interesting to just watch it expand as it goes. But it is a bit of a micro phenomenon to be a lot of programs and a lot of authors. Okay. So all of that is pretty lovely. So the question then becomes, do we like it piled up like this, or do we actually want it side by side? Because side by side does seem a little better. So then the question becomes, chat, what's your favorite side-by-side? Do you like the side panel, main panel that is in the Hello World app? Or do you have some other HTML method that you prefer? Because we've got sidebar, side panel, which leads to something along the lines of this, where side panel will have a nice separation to it. Or do you like something a little bit different? Because I'm definitely familiar enough with HTML that if there's a particular thing you like, I could probably get that up and running, but it would probably be faster just to use Shiny for base Shiny things at first. Yeah. Yeah. Terms are always tricky. So yeah, let's do the let's do the thing the way they do it in the example. So we'll put our lovely plot second. Get rid of that comma. And then we've got a sidebar layout. Oops. What was that? Probably should kick those twice, because those are also going to be inside of something, because that's inside a sidebar panel. And this is inside a main panel. Yeah, think about what sort of display it's going to be on. That's always a good consideration to have, and that is part of why one should use these. Because then if you go, I don't want this to be big, I want it small, it automatically rejiggers itself for use on a phone. Because it should. But once again, this feels too wide for this in this view, but it's fine in the phone view. And so now I want to check the sidebar layout and the sidebar panel to see what we can do about that. And it's entirely possible for us to put the slider underneath the plot and keep the checkboxes on the side. Yeah, it's a little unclear. Oh, most likely it's in the sidebar panel where we tell it how wide to be there. Hello? I said sidebar panel. You take me to sidebar layout? Oh, because it's in here. Okay, so we could make them fixed, but that kind of defeats the purpose. So let's move some things around, see how it looks with the slider underneath. Because this is still super wide. Because it's a certain percentage. And that's just no bueno. Could you put little arrows on the side of the slider for nudging? Like if you want to take this and go 2020, 2019, 2018. So the arrow keys already do that. So it should be feasible. I just don't know off the top of my head how. So yeah, we should be able to put in the sidebar width and see how that affects things. Yeah, so I put back in sidebar panel, and then we're moving around the slider because it was big and weird over on the side. And so if we come in here and do width, let's say 15%. Excuse me? Why are you 157%? Fluid row and fluid column. Interesting. So I'm a little confused about this 15% not registering as 15%. So 1/3 of 12 would be 4, so let's go with 2. So that's that, and then we go like this, and it's lovely, and we put it back, and it's still kind of nice. So that's good. Generally lovely all around. Okay. And so now we'll look into that revelation of our podcast. Fluid, well, it's probably fluid column that we want. So we got fluid page and fluid row. And here's the column function. Oh, it's a grid width. Okay. That makes a lot more sense now. So it's making a grid across the screen that's roughly this big per box. You get about 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Makes a lot more sense than me trying to figure out how many pixels or random percentages or anything of that sort. And so if we swapped out sidebar with the side panel and the main panel, I would imagine the main change would be that we would no longer have this puddle for our checkboxes to sit in. It would just be clean and on white instead of having that little bit of separation. And then we could make it have whatever we wanted. Minimize horizontal white space. Another reason you like the dashboard packages. I believe it. Because I don't like having all of this white space over here. But I also don't have enough to fill it with at the moment. And so once we had enough things, we could fill it over to the side. Right now, all we would be doing is stretching out things that don't need stretching. And so I think I like it how it is. I might make this a little bit wider such that you get a 1-to-1 ratio on the tiles. But for a first shiny thing, and what number of Tidy Tuesday are we on? Number 5. So this is the 5th Tidy Tuesday thing we've done anything with. I had touched a tiny bit of ggplot prior to this, but not enough to actually remember any of the commands. I would always look up literally all of it every time. So we were starting from who knows how this works. And then that first week, probably should have hit the ping, not the PDF. We borrowed some code from somebody else. I'm not talking looking up the commands. I didn't understand how the aesthetics worked. Like my brain had not yet made the connection between using the aesthetics and using the names of columns instead of straight up variables. And so we borrowed heavily from Elvira Nasarova for this one on the lemurs. Just to be able to make things work. And then poked around and did a few things to make this plot. That one that I showed you was Elvira's. Me just poking around, changing colors, and making sure I knew how it worked. This was just a fantastically horrendous column plot just to make sure I knew how any of these things worked. Basic progress. And then moved on, took what we learned from Elvira's work the previous week to make something that looked nice and had a good font and could do a couple of things, but we hadn't figured out how to put the lines between these two things. We have since learned how that works, but on this one, for the Australian birds, had no idea. Had to skip a week because I was busy on a Friday, and then we came back with lovely violin plots with some box plots inside showing the relative impact of the mode of a piece of music on its mood and its danceability. And it turns out that the mood interacts with the danceability independent of which mode it's in. And minor is actually more danceable in popular music than major. That is not a thing one would normally expect going in. And then last week, we were working with text because I had never actually added labels to plots before. So we were looking at Emmy nominations, and I was curious about how often a station won versus how often a station won given they were nominated. And so the Discovery Channel was only nominated like 3 times, but it won 2 out of the 3. And so we made a nice little Pareto Frontier, because which is more important? I don't know. HBO will tell you winning is the most important because they are so good at winning. But they're also incredibly good at being nominated, and so their efficiency is pretty low. They're nominated all the time, and they win a lot of the time. So this one, I didn't mess around with color nearly as much. Actually, not at all. I was interested in how do you get the text on there, how do you make it not bump into each other, and how do you add just little line segments, because this would have been really handy on that other one. And so now, here we are, playing around in Shiny. And so now we can take a thing and actually move around, interact with it, find information as a user instead of just reading a cute little report. So that's the progress I've made. We've been at this for 2 hours. I think I'm done with the data part of this show. I don't know if I want to come back and play Skull or not. Because I do need to be up somewhat early in the morning. If I start playing Skull again, will I get to bed on time? I think I will. So I'm going to take about a 10-minute break. I'm going to shut the streams down such that it separates this stream from the next one. I will be back in about 10 minutes, 9:15, playing Skull the Hero Slayer, where you play as a little skeleton that swaps out his head to turn into various different classes of skeleton to bash his way through a bunch of really dumb armored humans. It's roguelike. It's pretty fun. So far, it hasn't been as good as Dead Cells, but we'll see how it goes. Wish it had been this smooth for your first Shiny app. There's a lot of resources out there, and with Jessie doing her streams, I got to see a lot of just the little things that you need to keep an eye on. So I wasn't coming in from zero by any stretch. But this is the first one I ever actually put my hands on. And so I had a good feeling for a lot of the just random little bits. There are a lot of things that are familiar to me from other stuff I've done, and having a decent background in SQL and HTML makes a lot of things go a lot more smoothly than if you're like, what, huh, group by, huh? Yeah. So yeah, people like you and Jessie getting the information out there on how do you make this stuff cool, it helps a lot. Doing Shiny when they first... Yeah, so my closest experience to that is doing the modding for the Binding of Isaac. There was barely any documentation. Like, we're talking... They gave us the names of the functions for the API, and I'm pretty sure they gave us the parameters. But that was it. They didn't tell us what any of them did, so we had to infer what everything did from how the developers decided to name the functions and the things that go into them. And then hope for the best. And so I just poked at it, and poked and broke it, and it crashed, and then I poked, and whew, it was quite the thing. But, like, people wanted the information. And there weren't a whole lot of people that were willing and able to go in and just poke at it until it worked. And the people who had modded it prior to that had an even harder job because they were modding a game that they weren't given the API for. Like, they were just like, I want to make this awesome. And they did. But they didn't try to teach people how to use the new API because why? They're already modding. And if they were going to teach people, they would teach people how to do that. And so I filled a weird little gap when Afterbirth Plus came out, and we suddenly had the ability to do whatever we wanted, supposing we could read their minds. Oh, yeah. If you were in a comp sci class and you gave the documentation that they gave, you would not be passing that class, because it was literally something like this, where they had it automatically generate the documentation from the name of the function and the name of the variables. And luckily, it was a statically typed language, so you at least get the class of the input variables, such that you knew what it was kind of expecting. That was at least something. But thank you all for being here. I'm going to take a little bit of break. It is now only a 7-minute break, and then I will be back with some Skull the Hero's Lair.